Hello, everyone. Hi, I'm Dwana Butler. I'm the program coordinator at NIWIF, and we're really excited about this program tonight. There's been a lot of buzz around, a lot of excitement, and it's going to be an amazing conversation. For anyone who's not familiar with NIWIF, we're New York Women in Film and Television. We're a membership organization of about 2,000 members, and we're also part of 40 chapters worldwide. It's women and men in film, television, and new media, and we have 4 areas that we focus on. We focus on achievement, celebration of achievement for women in the business. We advocate for equity in the business. We preserve women's films, and we do what we do this evening. We have a lot of educational and career development programs, which are really great for information sharing and for networking. For anyone who's not familiar, our members produce our events. Tonight's producers are Emily Harold and Veena Rao. Veena Rao is our moderator for this evening. And just one other note, we are filming, so we will be having in the future our programs that have been taped will be up on our Vimeo website, so stay tuned for more information about that. And afterwards, we do continue the conversation across the street over at Phoebe, so if anyone wants to continue with us. And with that, I would love to hand it off to Marshall Rock, who will welcome us to this wonderful space.
So you get a lot of greetings tonight. Welcome to the Arthur Carter Journalism Institute. I'm Marcia Rock. I'm the Director of News and Documentary here, and I'm happy to see some of my students and former students in the audience, so that's terrific. It's a great panel tonight. I'm not going to take up much time, but I wanted to tell you that we're ending the NIWIF documentary season with a bang, because we're doing 2 Mondays in a row. We have tonight, and next Monday we're having a sort of conversation with Thea Kerman on fair use. So it's really important for all you documentary producers and filmmakers to come to that to learn what you can steal and what you can't. So now I'll introduce Emily, one of the producers.
Hi everyone, thanks so much for coming. I produced this panel with Veena, and it was quite a journey, and thank you all so much, all the panelists and everyone for being here. I'm just going to introduce everyone quickly so you know who everyone is. So Kasia is from The Atlantic. Can you wave? Cool. Lauren is from Vice Media's Munchies. Kyra is from Retro Report. Emma is from POV Digital. Marianna is from Storyhunter. Kathleen is from the New York Times OpDocs. And Jason is from Vimeo. Cool, and we are going to start by showing a compilation of work from everyone that is here. So if we could get the lights.
Put your head between the knees.
Katrina had built into a dangerous Category 5 hurricane barreling towards New Orleans.
We didn't have an instruction book to tell us how to do this.
He's the sweetest killer whale known to man.
In the movie, he jumps to freedom. But what about in real life?
Scientists in Scotland had successfully cloned a sheep.
People began to say, well, could we do this with humans? And people tended to assume that this would happen.
An 81-year-old woman has sued McDonald's, claiming their coffee was too hot.
Once everybody decides what is true about something, how do you deal with the fact that they might be wrong? We are not getting rid of fire. And so we need now to understand a lot more about it. The great irony here is The harder we try to remove fire, the worse we make it.
What's that? Soda. As if it had more. Pop. Coke.
So what is human existence? How can you actually sum it up? It turns out it's really pretty simple. We are dead stars looking back up at the sky.
There's a process that I think is very scientific, but I don't feel like I'm doing science. I think that it's at the core of art practice.
So I'm here in Seoul, and I'm here to look at a completely new, unusual trend called mukbang. It's more kind of like a food selfie. This is so fun!
Grasshopper number 1. It tastes like limey, it tastes garlicky.
Delicious.
You're going to help me with the cooking?
I am.
I'm known as Nona Marijuana. I like to cook with medical marijuana because I feel that it helps those who have been ill, and I will use it if it helps anyone. Bon appetit!
When someone cooks for you, it's like as intimate as sex sometimes, you know, it can be.
For me, it's like something new, you know. I know that I have a Dutch grandmother, but I never know that I have Jewish blood in my body, because since the colonial time, my family and other Jewish families not practicing Judaism anymore in this country.
The song, what's that? It was the first
People that are crossing our border illicitly are dying.
No, fight's never been over. We still are not being treated equal.
American citizens now live in a surveillance state.
That's been my philosophy. Always say yes.
If you put any event under a microscope, you will find incredible things going on.
A cautionary tale.
Several years ago, a small group of friends were searching for a better way to share their videos online. When they didn't find what they wanted, they decided to build it themselves. Vimeo was born. Over time, their labor of love grew up to be the best video player in the galaxy, and the internet took notice. Soon, the world's best video player began to attract the world's best creators. They put up their stories, their passion projects, their best work. As more creators came to Vimeo, more viewers came to watch them. What started as a simple sharing tool grew into a destination loved by millions of people.
Reportero!
The murder rate tripled from 2009 to 2012, and with corruption rampant among local police forces, the Mexican Navy was called in to replace them.
Well, thanks everyone for coming. So, the first thing I thought we could just go down and maybe describe your organization, how it started, and who your audience is. Do you want to start, Kathleen?
I work for the New York Times OpDocs. Oh, sorry. I work for the New York Times OpDocs. OpDocs was started in 2011 as an initiative by the opinion section to do video in the spirit of the op-ed page. So a place for both emerging and established filmmakers to tell stories on the issues of the day. Some of our pieces are very topical, some are more artistic, but we have a wide berth and tons of creative latitude that we give filmmakers to show their best work.
So, I work for Vimeo, and we are a creative platform, and we are for anyone, creators or viewers, who enjoy quality content.
Retro Report is a nonprofit news organization, and we started with the idea that in this day and age where the news cycle had sped up so fast that we were really missing context and perspective. So we go back to significant news events of our time and re-report them, reanalyze them. Documents are available, people who can speak who've never spoken before, and then most importantly for us, we try to tie it to today, why a story's still affecting us and how it's affecting us. And our first video is actually, it was 2 years next week, so and we've done 55 of them, which is a lot. We're kind of long form for the short form. We're 10 to 14 minutes, so I think we're on the longer end of the spectrum.
Hi, I'm Kasia, and I'm at The Atlantic magazine based in DC with an office up here, so I'm really excited to be here and meet everybody. We are a 150-plus-year-old magazine with a 2-year-old production department in-house. We create original documentaries and interview series, and we also feature a curated selection of independently created short-form videos on our site as editors' picks.
Hi, I'm Marianna. I'm with Storyhunter. Unlike all of these amazing people, we're also amazing, but we're not a publishing platform, or we're not a publisher ourselves. We're a platform. We cater to freelancers and to publishers. We connect them on our platform. The site was created around 2012 by a video journalist who felt the need to reach out to more publishers to get his work seen. There's obviously a need from the publisher's end to connect with quality talent on the ground. We have about 6,000 vetted quality freelancers on our platform, and assignments that range from like a day gig to we haven't gotten to the longer form doc, so we're still in the short form doc with very decent day rates. And we also sorry, I'm taking a little longer than usual, but like just the last two things, we provide our story hunters with not only a place to pitch their stories and connect with publishers, but we make sure they have insurance if they're assigned in a conflict zone. We're all journalists in the office, and we like really vouch for quality place of relationship between the two. And then we also pay them within 10 days. So, cool.
Hi, I work at Vice Media, which has been around for around 20 years. I started the company 9 years ago when they were making the switch over to video. We're about character-driven, immersive video pieces. I helped launch Munchies a year ago, which ranges from feature documentaries to short how-to videos, everything in between, and we did about 70 hours worth of video production in our first year.
So I work at POV, which is a documentary series that airs on PBS. We've been on PBS since 1988, so POV as an institution is not new, but POV Digital has been streaming short films online for, I believe, the past 4 or 5 years, and just this fall we started doing interactive documentaries. So we've been working with productions that are non-linear and web native, using technology and storytelling to sort of reinvent the documentary.
Great. I think one of the reasons Emily and I were interested in doing this panel, or organizing this panel, is to ask sort of the questions of how filmmakers can get involved and be part of some of these organizations and getting their work out there. So the next question is, what if you take submissions, what are you looking for? And how do you submit? And if you don't take submissions, how else do you work with the filmmaking community? So,
I can start.
Okay.
So OpDocs has rolling submissions. So anytime anyone wants to submit an idea, the email address is opinion.video@nytimes.com. And what we're looking for are good stories told with a point of view. One of the ways we judge the success of an OpDoc is how many comments it gets. OpDocs should start a conversation and be something that is going to provoke a response. It doesn't have to be topical in the sense of being on the news. It could be something that's more emotional. One of our most successful shorts is stills set to music, to give you a sense of our range, to pieces by like Laura Poitras, which is very, very on the news. So that's how our submissions process works. So please feel free to submit an idea, and I do check that account, so you can say you saw me here.
So as senior manager over at Vimeo, we don't take submissions per se. We are at tons of events like these across the country, across the world. We meet a lot of filmmakers, we go to a lot of festivals, and we see stuff. And I also manage, again, a team of curators whose job is to basically scour the site looking for the best work. And in my practice, I would say that if you care enough about creating good work, most of the time you'll care enough about making sure that your good work is seen. And I think if you put in effort into launching a piece on Vimeo, and you make an effort of going to your social networks and getting buzz, and you do due diligence in talking to blogs and trying to find placements, you'll show up on our radar and we will check you out. So.
We don't take submissions. We do work with freelancers. And one thing that's interesting, I think, because we have a mix between, we're kind of doing news and history, is that a lot of our producers have a much stronger news background. They come from places like Frontline or 60 Minutes. But our editors are really more traditional documentary film editors. So I think it's that combination, that push-pull between news and documentary that really works well.
We take submissions to our editors' picks, the curated selection of work that we showcase on the site. And that's really ideal for filmmakers who are looking to promote a finished piece that they've already funded, because unfortunately we can't compensate filmmakers for those pieces. This is The Atlantic. Our editors' picks is the curated selection, and we have a curator named Chris who will take a look at anything you care to send our way, just video at The Atlantic. And we are starting to work with a growing network of freelancers commissioning work. I ask that you not pitch us any specific ideas, but please do reach out if you're interested in working with us. It's always great to have a conversation and see if there might be an opportunity to collaborate down the line.
So on Storyhunter, we have variety of live assignments. On a given basis, we'll have like 20, 30 live assignments. We've got flooded with Nepal over the weekend, so a lot of publishers looking for quality people in Nepal. We have global assignments, and so the way that you can pitch or get commissioned is to essentially create a profile on the platform, make sure it looks amazing, because that's what publishers look at before they commission you. You'll put your work samples essentially, and then you will pitch yourself. You will go there, see what assignment you want to, get commissioned for, and sell yourself. Negotiate if you want to as well.
I think at Vice we're a little different. That I don't want to say 100% of the time we don't take outside submissions, but pretty much over the years we don't take outside submissions. I think we work with a variety of different freelancers, but for us it's really important for us to get involved from the development to the production to the editing and stay involved the whole way to give it the Vice voice and style. And to be on brand. So we are starting to work with filmmakers who may have a pitch that they're in development, but it's from the ground up, so it stays within our style.
POV does take submissions. Actually, our call for entries is open right now through June 15th. So we accept submissions for feature-length documentaries, shorts, and also works in progress, like early introductions. So if you have a project that you're working on or you're just starting to work on and you want to show it to the POV staff now, and we can take a look at it and know that it's out there. So if you are working on something or have something that you want to submit before June 15th. And then in addition to that, our staff is constantly going to festivals and meeting filmmakers, and as POV is a series that's been on since 1988, we have a really strong network of documentary filmmakers, so we are constantly in contact with people to see what they're working on, and we also find films that way.
So this is a more general question, just a question about the online space versus theatrical, or one made for TV. And so we were just wondering what your thoughts are on the differences between a doc that's really made for an online audience and one that is made for a theatrical or TV audience. And anyone can jump in here, whoever wants to go.
I have a really nerdy theory. It's like a science metaphor. Are you ready? Maybe I'm overselling it. I think that when you have someone's attention in a theater or on TV, you have a block of time that they've already committed to your project. They are coming in with good faith that you will have something to offer them, whereas when you encounter a work online, you have your audience is ready to leave within 5 seconds. There's a Reddit theory that you can click like 7% of the way into the video and not miss anything, because on the web you have to grab people instantly. So my theory of web video is that it demands density. It demands a density of ideas and quality visual storytelling, a quirkiness and originality that will grab people right away. Whereas in a theater or on TV, you can really take your time and sort of weave a long, slow, beautiful narrative. Web just has to dive in.
I think we grappled with this a lot because we're doing longer form, and what we and what we decided to do is a kind of minute open that really it's almost like a pact with the viewer. Like, okay, this is where this piece is going, so stick with us. Trust us that we're going to follow through. And I think that's really worked for us, because then we didn't want to sacrifice the narrative and the unfolding and building of characters and all those things that you have. Sometimes you just need time to tell a story and have twists and turns. So,
and then they'll commit to 15 minutes of a retro report.
Yeah, so I think that's helped. But it was very much, we think a lot about if we transition to broadcast, you wouldn't need that minute. That minute is really a pact with the online audience to say, trust us, stick with us, something good's coming.
Vice is awesome at this. You guys start everything with an explosion. It's like, boom, are you ready?
Well, everything starts with our cold opening of where you just drop into a scene. But with Munchies specifically, we did a 60-minute doc on Andy Ricker, chef, last year, and just because we wanted to tell that story. And we think that if it's a good story, I think your audience will go with you. And I think that has potential for TV later. It could be across platforms, so something can be valuable, digital, grow, and go theatrical or go TV. But I think digital is just a lot more experimental. You can get things going a lot quicker. In the process, I've never worked in TV, but it's a lot slower, I imagine, where this year we were able to develop like 18 new series. And if we can try things out once. If it clicks, we keep going with it. If it doesn't, then you can cut it off your list. And I think it's a lot more fluid with what you're able to greenlight within the year.
I think Kasia's definitely onto something, which is the defining quirk of online is that the audience has the ability to exit at any moment. And a lot of people equate that with length. That means that you have to make short work. And that's not true at all. No. There's a great line that Lucy Walker, famous documentarian, said on a panel at Sundance that I was at this year, that's your work needs, like, how long should a film for the web be? She's like, 1 second shorter than boring. Perfect. Like, we've had 35, 40-minute documentaries that we put in Vimeo staff picks that have done extraordinarily well, but they maintain, there's no lag, there's no lull, because that's when you're going to have an exit point. The other thing I will say is you don't necessarily need to have a cold open where you're just dropping somebody into an exciting situation, but there needs to be something about the presentation, and that's the thumbnail, the description, the subject, the headline, that gets immediate attention. There's got to be an immediate hook, otherwise you won't get the initial click in the first place. And so on Vimeo staff picks, we're very diverse. Sometimes it's a great subject, sometimes it's a great headline, sometimes it's a great thumbnail, opens with a beautiful shot, maybe it's a slow shot, but then we're like, wow, this is just gorgeous, beautiful cinematography, something like that. There needs to be something that's grabbing immediate interest, basically.
I would definitely agree with all the points made. I think that the visual is so important for online. Some of our most popular op docs are also our longest, so I definitely don't think length is an issue. But with op docs, we really try to allow the pieces to feel more like films you would see in a film festival than newsier pieces. So we really want to be able to be a platform for people with more artistic visions, so we often wrestle with this issue. Sometimes something can't be interesting in the first 10 seconds, but if it looks good, it'll keep people. So one piece of advice I would give filmmakers, especially when you're pitching, is pitch beautiful images. Because even if you have a great story, at least some stills really go a long way if you're pitching op docs, and I'm sure any of these other folks, because with the web, more than TV or the theater where you have committed to something, I think it was okay when things didn't look good if there was a really good story. But I don't know if that's the case anymore. I think having great, high quality, A+ visuals is almost just as important as story these days.
Yeah, and I'd say people say that because we're moving to a mobile consumption world that it doesn't matter because it's on a phone. That's BS, because I have a retina screen and I'm holding it at my face about this distance, and beautiful images look beautiful. So
I also think that one thing that the web does allow is because there's so much experimentation with the form, you can really, as a filmmaker, think about, okay, you have a story, what's the best way to tell it? And you don't have to think about it in the exact same, in the traditional documentary sense. You have the option of really thinking, okay, is this a series? Is this a 5-minute short? Is this a 10-minute short? Or is it something totally different? Is it a multimedia story? And I think that everything that everyone's saying is right, and the packaging is super important, especially if you're making something interactive. But I think that it can be, frightening to know that people are moving so quickly and it's so hard to keep attention. And if you're anything like me, you have 30 windows open at the same time, so something really has to grab you. But I think that if you are thinking about telling a story and you think about truly outside the box, what's the best way to tell this story, the web allows infinite possibilities in that way. So that's the great thing about online documentary.
I'll just add that just thinking about a digital native audience, I hope that's true for people who watch TV too, but I'm not sure since I don't have a TV. But I think the essential element of providing a universal connection, and it just goes down to storytelling more than anything else, I guess, but if you're able to grab that person with a connection, like here's something that you can relate to, even if it's a completely different reality from yours, if there's something that, goes tick in my heart, then usually you'll continue watching regardless if it's 15 or 40 minutes or 2. There's definitely something about that initial connection to the story that makes a huge difference. Whereas I think if people, again, are committed to watching, or they've paid for a ticket, and they're inside a closed, dark room, they're probably going to sit through more than a couple seconds. Or you're too lazy to switch because you might get, commercial or whatever. But definitely the importance of that first initial connection there.
Okay, great. Well, since this is a NIWIFT panel, we thought it'd be important to bring up where women filmmakers fit in, and do you see more women content producers, directors creating work in the online space, or any observations you have in that area of women content creators, and a lot of. Go ahead.
I'll say very straight up that we are not conscientious about it. We look for content, and somebody asked me what percentage of staff picks are female filmmakers, and I have to say I don't know, because that's not usually what I'm looking for. I think what I will say is the nature of the access to entry is so low for short filmmaking on the web right now. You just need a DSLR, you need an idea, and you need a subject. That I think that in other sort of mediums and other sort of formats of entertainment throughout entertainment's history, we've had more gatekeepers who kind of control the purse strings, control the access. And I think that if I were to go back and say, do a running tally of how many staff pick filmmakers are females, I think the percentages will be better than most other mediums, because I think there's nothing that's stopping you. There's nobody that has to say yes for you to go out and execute your vision.
OpDocs has pretty good parity between male and female filmmakers, and we're always looking for more female-centric stories.
So I can only speak to our organization because I'm not as familiar with the online documentary space, but clearly I'm a woman, half our producers are women, and we're less about the project has a voice as opposed to the filmmakers have a voice, but it is critical to have women as part of that, of course, as is true in any news organization. But one of the stories I'm the most proud of is a story we did on the vaccine fears. And that came from a woman who's a parent and who had been working in network news and couldn't keep up that frenetic lifestyle. And so she's doing pieces for us, and could someone else on staff have done the piece? Yes. But was it better because part of her regular life she was also engaged in thinking about the issues? I think so. So especially when it comes to story ideas, it's important to have a diverse group of people who are thinking about these issues and helping direct what you cover.
Well, our staff is 50-50 in the video department, so that's a good start. And I feel like I interact with more freelance and independent female producers than male producers. That's just anecdotal, but I just see so many badass women making videos that I'm not worried.
That's great. I have to say, I don't know percentages either, but we don't have that many women freelancers on our platform as compared to men. We do have a real amazing success story is that MSNBC, or rather MSN, started working with this double team, two girls who were Columbia graduates, on a series about women empowerment. And they were so thrilled with their work that they essentially are only working with them for the series. Wish there were more success stories like that, and not necessarily just related to hiring a woman to tell a woman's story. Obviously in some conflict areas you'll have a smaller ratio of women, it seems, out there risking their lives. But yeah, I hope all the women here will sign up.
I'm not sure about percentages either, but I think Vice has this perception of being a boys' club, and when I look around my office, especially in the last 9 years, I'm surrounded by women producers, managers, editors, and two of my women colleagues are here tonight as well. So we don't take outside submissions for working with women filmmakers, but we work with a ton of freelancers or staff. Also, I guess specifically about the food world, often grapples with male chefs getting more attention in the media than female chefs, and it was a big buzz this year with the Gods of Food article that came out. 3 male chefs, and they didn't include one female at the top of the list within their article. In our response to do that, a lot of articles came out about what it's like to be a female and female issues, and our responses were working on just profiling more female chefs, but just because they're chefs, and not focusing on, obviously they're women and they're gonna have women issues, but we just did one last week with this woman, Margot Henderson, whose husband is the famous Fergus Henderson, and she's been often overshadowed for years, and finally she's at her place in time where she can tell her story. So we're trying to do stuff like that at our organization.
I've been trying to do mental math to find a percentage, and I'm terrible at math, so that's not happening. But I know, as you know, as far back as POV has gone, we've been very dedicated to making sure that we feature films by underrepresented voices. And there's, if I think of the past 2 seasons of broadcast, I'd say it's probably 50-50 male and female producers. As far as online goes, I'm not sure, but I would say that a lot of the stories that resonate with me have been focused on women. So whether the producer is female or not, I think it's important to tell women's stories, and I think that we do that very well. That said, I mean, I think there's always the complication of you don't want like a quota, and you don't want to be profiling people based on their gender and their gender identity, but it is really important to keep it in mind. So it's always something that at least I'm always thinking about.
So this is another sort of general question, but I mean, obviously there's a lot of online venues for short documentary work these days, and I'm interested in what you guys think are the positives and negatives of that reality for filmmakers, you know, who maybe typically were making films for, you know, for festivals or for theatrical release or for TV, and yeah, I mean, what from the filmmaker's perspective is the sort of positive and negative in kind of adapting their stories for the online space, in terms of what you might, what might be the advantage or, you know, sort of disadvantages of going that route, or, yeah, generally.
I guess I'll kick it off because I figure what I have to say is probably different from most of the other people on this panel. You know, Vimeo is different because you can't directly monetize your videos on Vimeo. And so we promote this beautiful world where you upload to Vimeo and then you find publishers who want the page views, who want the clicks, and they can just sort of embed the film wherever you want. Now I understand that, you know, if a publication is paying you money to produce a piece, then that becomes problematic because they're going to want exclusivity. But we don't care about exclusivity. And basically, our pitch to creators is, if you make good work and you share it on Vimeo, you can reach the largest possible audience that you can online for this kind of quality, thoughtful work. And it is basically your LinkedIn, it is your cargo collective, it is your reel. When you make something that gets staff picks and gets 100,000, 200,000 views, you are being seen by all the tastemakers in your particular industry, all the editors, all the commissioners. You are really building your career in a very tangible way. The success stories that I hear back from filmmakers who get staff picked are great, you know, in various fields. Animators say, well, I don't need to worry about a freelance job for another year because I'm booked solid because I got this staff pick. Same thing with documentary people. I know a lot of people who work at major publishers who find the talent, the freelance talent, and eventually sometimes the full-time directors and producers at their publications that they find through the sort of network effect of the exposure that you can get on Vimeo. And so I think it's a net positive because it does level the playing field. You can sort of rise and sort of take the world by storm with the quality of your vision and your work from anywhere. You don't have to know anybody. You will know somebody after you have a quality piece that makes some noise.
And it's exciting to experiment in this new space. I mean, I left after 15 years at 60 Minutes, and one of the big reasons I left was because it was exciting to think about building a place, an internet-first place where people could see these films and could interact with them, and that it wasn't a schedule or a time, that they could kind of grow over time, and how you could link to them in different ways. I mean, part of our vision, it's a little different, but we're building a library, an online library of, hopefully at some point hundreds of these films, and you can choose your path through history, through person, through year. So that is what's exciting to me, is thinking about the future and what that means, and how for filmmakers, but also for users, for viewers, as a way to think about the world and think more critically about media coverage and issues that are continuing to affect us.
One thing that I think about is sort of what the venues are for short documentary films outside of the internet. I mean, you can show your short at a festival. There are lots of festivals. And occasionally, if you live in a city, there are cool theaters that play compilations of shorts. But outside of the internet and really hand-picked, curated series, you can upload your video online to Vimeo, and it's an excellent, incredible platform. But I think that as more organizations and publishers think about where short documentaries can fit into their brand and what they offer, it offers great opportunities for documentary filmmakers. I think there's a struggle because right now I think a lot of people, us included, are trying to figure out where the place is for them and what to dedicate to them and how to make as far as POV goes, how to make POV a place to watch short documentaries. But we're working on it because we think it's really important, and I think that short documentaries will become a thing that more and more places host and look for. So I think there's a lot of opportunity in it.
And also another thing to think about is it can be a great way to experiment to find out if there is a feature-length documentary, right? I mean, in the way that magazine writers can write a magazine piece and decide if there's a book they want to spend the next 3 years writing. And so I think that's an exciting way to think about just testing, can your character sustain it? Is there a market for it? I mean, I think it's a way to try something on a smaller scale before jumping in.
Yeah, definitely. OpDocs, a lot of our shorts are related to feature projects at different stages in production, and a number of our shorts were filmmakers experimenting with an idea, seeing where it would go, and now there's a feature film. There's many examples of that, and one of the other important differences between publishing online or in a film festival or even on television is audience. Because if you publish something on NewYorkTimes.com, it has a global reach. People all around the world can see your work at the same time and also share it, comment on it. So in terms of audience and building audience, I think that's a very, very big difference from festivals or TV.
I think also both a positive and negative is having to wear many hats. I think everyone now with digital is looking for a producer, editor, shooter. That work you can't really focus on because budgets are not as big as TV. They want someone who can kind of do it all. And it's hard to just be like, I'm a story producer. I think that wearing many hats is an asset, but at the same time, wearing many hats is very difficult. And sometimes it's good to have a shooter or have a producer and get some distance. I'm someone who was always a one-man band, liked producing and shooting and cutting
One-woman band.
One-woman band. I like that. I like having that ownership over my stuff, so that fits well with the way I work. But not everyone works like that, so I think it can be a positive and a negative depending on who you are.
I would just, quickly add to that regarding budgets. And we've seen just with our clients, when they're hiring a freelancer, it would be a drastic commitment to hire a freelancer for a full-length doc. It's such a huge budget. It's such a huge commitment. Whereas what we see on a day-to-day basis is like they'll hire you for something shorter. Once they've built that relationship, you're their go-to person for a bigger project. And so it can be an entryway into a relationship with a publisher, which you might not have had if you were only selling yourself as a feature-length documentary producer.
So that actually segues nicely into the next question when you mentioned budgets. So I'm sure a lot of filmmakers who are considering, submitting to some of your organizations are wondering about payment. And so I'm wondering what sort of payment is available to filmmakers, like how much, for those of you who take submissions, how much is the payment for filmmakers, and is that enough to really produce the video? Because as we all know, filmmaking is expensive, and there's sort of a lot of roles someone has to play. Although, the one-woman band is a thing that I feel like is the way things are going. But in the end, it is expensive to produce something that's high quality, and all of these organizations produce great, amazing videos. So I don't know if anyone wants to take that question.
I'll start because, well, again, we don't commission people, but obviously we approve each assignment that goes on the platform. We do strive, we essentially are very aware of that. So we've had, normally our bigger clients they're aware of what goes into making a video. They're usually working with their own staff. They know how much it costs for a good piece of video, a good story. Some of our smaller clients sometimes need a little counseling on that. And we always get them up. And honestly, it does reflect on what they get. And so what we're basically teaching them is that you pay a little more, you're gonna get better work. And we actually don't want the lower paid assignments on there. We think it's important to value good work. That's not your question.
No, I mean, that you have a different organization. Yeah, no, I mean, that makes sense, yeah.
Oh, wow. So anything, I think our lowest rate would be about $150 a day. And it could be for half a day assignment. It could be a fixing job. So honestly, it ranges from that to, we've had assignments up for $20,000. So it's always on a good range, let's say. And again, as I mentioned, if you're a highly qualified person and you're a perfect person for the assignment, prove your point and negotiate, maybe counter offer with a publisher. We've seen a lot of rate adjustments based on that. We have all sorts of assignments. So sometimes a publisher is looking for one person band. Other times they're looking for specifically for a shooter, specifically for a producer, editor. It kind of just ranges.
I can say this is also a different situation, but for POV, we're looking for completed works already. So licensing fees for short documentaries, linear documentaries, can be anywhere from $2,500 to $10,000, I believe. And then, but for co-productions, if you're submitting a work that we would, work with you on for interactive documentary, then the rate can be a bit higher than that. So back in the fall, we produced and showcased 6 interactive documentaries that were co-productions, which the projects were 75, 80, 90% done, and we helped them get to the finish line, and then hosted it, distributed it, and did a lot of engagement and awareness around it. So it varies. Is basically the answer.
So for OpDocs, we do pay for our pieces. Unfortunately, it's not probably what the piece is worth, but we do compensate all of our filmmakers. and we do offer a small number of commissions which have a higher rate. Well, to give you a sense of range, we've had some pitch competitions, and the prizes have been, one was at Camden, and the prize was $2,000, and one was at Sheffield, and the prize was $5,000, which would be like the high-end range for an OpDoc.
Okay, I think that's probably all of the people who take submissions. So I think, you know, that, or
I mean, I guess I'll take an opportunity to give a plug for our Vimeo On Demand platform, which is, you know, if you have a pro account, it's the largest transactional VOD platform that's open to anyone. And so there's no gatekeeper, there's no multi-$1,000 encoding process that you have to do to get into the iTunes store. If you have an audience and you feel like you can reach an audience and you can monetize that audience, a Vimeo Pro account will give you a sophisticated set of tools to be able to do that. Set your own rental price, set your own sales price, do either or both, as well as a 90-10 split. So yeah, we've seen a lot of people. We're starting to really see our on-demand platform is 2 years old now, and it's been really heartening to see some people from the documentary space who are taking advantage of both halves of the Vimeo experience. And so somebody who comes to mind is a filmmaker named Sean Dunn, and he sort of came up doing short documentaries on the web, and some of these did phenomenally well. There's a film called American Juggalos that did, you know, 1 million+ views. He has a film called The Archive that did 1 million+ views and then went to Sundance. And through the experience that he was able to have of both burnishing his craft, finding collaborators, developing relationships with press and other outlets, when the time came around for him to do his feature film, he debuted at Tribeca with a film called Oxiana, and then 2 months later, without even taking offers from distributors, he distributed himself. And he did very well. It's one of our highest performing docs still to this date. And he had full control over the entire process of that distribution and got to reap the lion's share of the rewards with that 90-10 split. So.
Can I just add, we don't take any agency fees on our platform.
Oh, I just wanted to add to Jason, the Vimeo store is also available on theatlantic.com with a curated selection of documentaries.
So our another question before we turn to the Q&A, are there any new initiatives at your organization that are coming up? Anything filmmakers should keep on their radar? You know, anything that's
I'm hiring. Come talk to me in DC and New York.
POV does, we've been hosting a lab called POV Hackathon since 2012. We just had our most recent one in New York in April, and we're going to do our next one in Chicago in August. So if you have an idea if you have media and you have an idea for an interactive project, you should definitely apply. We will, you know, hear your pitch, and if you're selected, then we'll find technologists to pair you up with, unless you already have a technologist, and then you can bring them with you. And it's a 48-hour environment of just like intense creativity and work. And when it's over, we've had 100% completion rate of prototypes, and you screen what you've made for a bunch of people, and you get feedback. And a lot of the projects have gone on to be, you know, successful projects. That 4 of the 6 interactive shorts that we produced in the fall started as hackathon projects. So it's pretty cool. And if you live in Chicago, you should apply. And if you don't live in Chicago, you should just be in the loop, and then you could apply to another one. So, yeah.
This is not necessarily new, but it's very cool. We do a pretty much monthly screen up. We'll have a venue that essentially will screen stories that have been commissioned through Storyhunter. We'll have a Q&A with the producers, it's just very fun. It's a place to meet other filmmakers, get a drink, relax after work. So they're called screen-ups. We kind of coined that term. So when you sign up or just you're able to, we have a meetup page as well that you can essentially follow and be notified when the next one's coming around.
Vimeo, we're a big technology company. We're doing new stuff all the time. What I'm excited about in particular as it relates to my job, just a couple weeks ago we debuted something called Categories 2.0, which is a very unoriginal title for it. But what it was is we had been historically pretty bad at machine categorizing things. Our algorithms for surfacing content were subpar. And so you could go to staff picks, of course. You could follow me, and I watch 30 things a day, and you could see good stuff that way. But if you wanted to browse the site, it was kind of difficult. It was beautiful in a way because what it did is it created a culture that is decidedly unalgorithmic. There's human curation that permeates Vimeo all the way down from people in the Netherlands who, I don't know what they do for a full-time job, but their channels are sick. They must watch a lot of videos. So we decided to take a lead in that front, and we made our browsable category system really pretty, and everything that you go to it across 16 different categories, across 80 different subcategories, is now hand curated. And that hand curating weights search, it weights any sort of algorithmic recommendation feed that's going throughout the rest of the site. So Vimeo, for content discovery, when you don't know what you don't want to watch, and you don't want to just watch what I tell you to watch in staff picks, like, it's a better experience for you now. On the VOD side, we are really bullish on this space. We think there's a lot of opportunity out there for publishers from around the world who've been locked out of traditional publishing systems to be able to monetize their work effectively. We understand that there's a lot of know-how and there's a lot of traditional marketing money that you get when you go to a distributor with a feature film project that's lacking in a self-distribution space. We're trying to find ways to help. So one of the new ones is a major partnership we announced with Indiegogo at Sundance this year, which is, if you are successfully funded film on Indiegogo, you have the opportunity to apply to a $2 million matching marketing fund that we just put together. So we're excited to see what kind of projects come out of that partnership. And then down the road, we have announced that we are looking forward to introducing what's called SVOD, subscription VOD, to the Vimeo platform, which means that whereas what we're doing right now, which is transactional, where you pay a rental price or a sales price for a particular piece of content, viewers will now be able to subscribe to streams of content that are continually updating and be billed on a monthly basis. And we're the same way that we sort of changed the paradigm by making our transactional VOD platform accessible to everyone, we're going to make our subscription VOD service accessible to everyone. So if you're a high volume producer or you're with an organization that's continually putting out interesting content, you can now monetize that on a subscription reoccurring basis the same way that Netflix does.
This is going to sound really small after all of the things that they're doing. But I mentioned that, we're building a library of these. Cool. Yeah, exactly. And we have 55 in the library. We have a lot of talks about what makes the library. Is it 100? Is 50? Could it be a library yet? But as part of that, we're building, and actually the first one is launching tomorrow. Each story has its own page with the video, but we're building these video timelines In fact, I'm going to move to Chicago and enter the hackathon, and maybe our timeline will be even cooler. But that's a kind of opportunity, I think, for people who are maybe working on larger projects but have little pieces of a moment in history or a character who says something interesting on a topic. If you want to browse our list of stories we've covered and themes and see if you have any material that might fit as we grow the timeline out.
So for OpDocs, we are publishing our 158th film tomorrow at 7 a.m. if nothing big happens in the next 12 hours. So we're just continuing to look for great short films. And also if anyone has ideas for different kinds of storytelling formats, interactives, we're open to that as well. We're just keep on looking for new shorts. So we're really sticking with our meat and potatoes right now. We don't have anything new to announce besides just keeping on with what we do best, which is short films with a point of view.
Just from a content point of view as well, because we don't have much new tech development this year, but we're working on launching local sites and working with our offices to launch. Munchies in Mexico just launched this year. We're looking at launching in France, and we're working with our China office to open this year. So we're kind of focusing on getting local reporting and video coverage from those countries. And then we're finishing up a featured doc on the seal hunt in Canada and as seal meat as a sustainable form of meat that we've been working on for the last year. So that's like our big content that's coming out.
Are the feature docs you mentioned, are they viewable online?
It hasn't come out yet. I think we're trying to figure out strategy-wise. Like last year, our feature-length doc, it just premiered online, which not just premiered online, it's like a huge audience. With this, we're trying to take a look and see if you can go both the traditional route and then have it air digitally. So we've been working on a Danny Bowen of Mission Chinese Food feature for the last year and a half as well. So we're like, do we go the film festival route, and then eventually, because we're our own platform and in-house production company, there's always a place for it to air. So we're kind of like figuring out if it goes digitally first or if it's ends up coming back digitally. So we're trying to explore those.
All right. Well, unless there's anything specific any of you want to add, we can turn it to the audience and do a little Q&A. Okay.
For New York Times and Atlantic and POV specifically, do you accept? So the question is do the publications accept submissions that are already available to be seen on the web, say on Vimeo or YouTube, or do you need exclusivity?
We don't. So we do non-exclusive agreements for online for web only. Yeah, so that's not a problem.
Likewise.
If you have a question, will you wait till we get you a mic? Okay. Kelsey's going to be on that side of the room. Just keep your hand up.
We don't need exclusivity at the Atlantic either. Just send your finished projects our way.
Yes, we do need exclusivity.
Hi, my name's Dami Akinusi. I'm a filmmaker, documentaries. I wanted to find out, I don't know whether Vimeo would be the best person to ask, but perhaps all of you. If you have like some footage or documentaries, some programs maybe in the archive, and now with this new kind of webisodes and the web out there, what would you suggest as a way to either redistribute or make use of those programs, those shows, those documentaries? Obviously with Vimeo, it makes sense, video on demand, but I've currently been speaking to quite a few people who are talking about like Fubu TV, Collide TV, all of these kind of online platforms that offer you a kind of partner share once they get a certain amount of viewers and therefore advertising. So just in that respect, if you're, as filmmakers, what would you suggest a good approach to using, for putting out footage that you haven't, that you've got space to use for, basically?
It's hard to give general advice in that regard. Like, what is your goal for it? Do you want to monetize it? Do you want to try to leverage it for current or future projects?
I think monetize it because, I mean, just me personally, I create like web series as a way to, I guess, promote myself online on spaces like YouTube and stuff like that. But this is content that's either, it's being aired already or distributed through film festivals. And I wouldn't say it's necessarily, in terms of the numbers, I mean, I think it's harder to push out a feature and expect millions to watch it. Whereas when I do a web series, it's easier because it's a 5-minute webisode. So I'd say monetize.
Okay. Well, so our monetizing platform would be Vimeo on demand, so putting it up for transactional sale. We have, I have a counterpart. I do curation for free Vimeo, so like staff picks, but we also have a counterpart who does curation for VOD. And so there's an opportunity to get premium placement, to get onto our homepage, not through any sort of algorithmic gaming or popularity charts, but just by appealing to a person who thinks that your work is really strong. And those placements, similar to what I was talking about with categories, can be kind of far-ranging because if you get editorial consideration on the Vimeo on-demand platform, then that information gets fed into search. It gets into other sort of algorithmic methodologies throughout the site. So that would be the potential. The difficult thing that you're going to have is how do you, lacking any sort of curatorial consideration on our part, how do you build up excitement and awareness for something that's kind of already had its heyday? And that's obviously a much more challenging proposition. One would be to leverage free content to build awareness for the previous content. So you could do a short 5 or 10 minute piece that's like a follow-up on whatever themes or subjects that was being touched on in the previous piece. And if that is really compelling, it might bring some attention or awareness back to the previous piece. You could also similarly dice it up and do sort of an excerpt or the first 10 minutes or something like that. I tend to find that those things, when you try to dice up something that's longer and put it out for free, it's not really that effective unless it works itself as like a cohesive, self-contained piece, though. So I hope that helps a bit.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. This has been wonderful. Thank you. I have 2 questions, and I'm going to ask them both, and then it'd be great if you could answer them. My first question is it Kasia?
Kasia.
Kasia, okay. Kasia and Emma, you didn't speak at all about what kind of subject matter you're looking for, or what, that's my first question. My second question is, to all of you who take outside submissions, when Etsy took, hired people from the outside, I produced 2 videos for them. They do it all in-house now. And according to my executive producer, one of my videos was the second most watched on Vimeo. But I didn't benefit from it because it was embedded from the Vimeo site. My name came all the way at the end. And there was a little bio of me on the blog on Etsy, but nobody goes there, right? And it went everywhere. It was on the Huffington Post, but I never got any credit. So my point is, how do you help filmmakers in terms of how do you get the word out there about them? How do you promote them, or do you?
Speaking to your first question about the kinds of content we look for, our editor's picks, our curated selection on our site, we look for primarily short documentaries that really work as standalone short pieces that can hook a viewer immediately and tell a meaningful story. We also do feature some more experimental short films and animations, and occasionally a music video or random drone footage of something cool. We like to mix it up. And to your second question, I guess that was primarily for Vimeo, but when we do feature curated work, we highlight the filmmaker at the top of the post and we link through to them. And if they have a current project or future project they'd like to hype, we can include that in the paragraph with a link through. So for example, if someone is giving us a short and they're raising money for a new project on Kickstarter, we can link to that and drive interested readers to their page.
And for us, we just look for really good storytelling. So a lot of our, feature films that air on PBS are social issue films, but sometimes they're just great character-driven stories. And online, it's really the same. So, I mean, some of my favorites, one that stands out was called Irma, and it's about a female wrestler in Mexico. It's just a short snippet, like look into her life today. Another one is about a jazz teacher in California. Actually, it was a Storyhunter short about a jazz teacher who works in a poor neighborhood in California and sending a student to college for the first time at Berklee College of Music. So it can be about really anything, international, here in the U.S. So yeah. For shorts, yes, but for the interactive stuff, it can really be way more experimental. Yeah.
So yeah, I would say, I'm sorry that you didn't feel like you got credit for your work and all the sort of viral appeal that happened. That can be really frustrating, I understand. So
I mean, does it depend more on the filmmaker to promote? I mean, that's one thing I'm really bad at.
well, I think the thing that, it probably got a kickstart from us. It may have gotten a staff pick. We used to staff pick a few of Etsy's pieces. And we're in an interesting position right now where more and more publishers like The Atlantic, like the New York Times, are coming onto our platform. And yet we really have a strong sort of creator-centric approach, and those two things can sometimes be in conflict. We want to encourage, these great editorial organizations who are providing us brilliant content for free. We don't want to scare them off, but at the same time, we do want to celebrate and value, the creative voices behind the work. So what I say, we've made a much stronger point of insisting with publishers that when they do publish under their accounts, that they do full credits in the description. We have something called a credit box, which I think a lot of people didn't really know it exists, but we're having a new sort of redesign of the page that's going to make that more prominent, so that everybody who works on a piece, even if they're not the account owner of the clip, will have their thumbnail, their avatar, and their name and what they worked on included on the clip page. And what that does is it allows you sort of shared ownership, so that clip that has all those views and has that staff pick badge, you can show that on your profile page on Vimeo as well. The profile page is acting more and more like a reel nowadays, or a cargo collective. It's where you can drive people's traffic to see your work. So we feel like it's important that if you did a piece for a brand or you did something shared, that you can showcase it there as well. And similarly, with this new redesign that's going to create the credit box more prominently, there's also more prominent follow buttons, so that all the people who are associated with a successful clip can sort of reap some of the awards of that through following. What I will say is that if somebody's really taken with the piece, they'll probably dig deep enough to figure out who made it. And we know who made it, and there's certain things that we're able to do as well that can benefit filmmakers. And so, for example, just recently I advised on a Tribeca program for online work called the New Online Work Program. And I got to put forward 10 different names of people who were going to be part of an official Tribeca short film program, basically. Similarly, I get requests from brands all the time who want to work with Vimeo, and I'm putting forward names of filmmakers forward for those kind of prospective jobs. And so, yeah, I do my homework, and I learn who makes the work that I like, so. It's probably a little bit more complicated than explain. I'll go into it depth afterwards.
Hi. I'm not sure if you can answer this or not, but I was curious about production quality. So do you know if everything is coming in shot on a DSLR, or can people shoot on their iPhones, or what you take, or what what you find is the best quality that you usually air or whatever?
I can speak to quality. I said earlier that visuals are so important in the online form. That being said, sometimes a story is best told on an iPhone. And there are ways to mix together different qualities of footage in telling your story. I would say that if you are an emerging filmmaker and you don't have access to the best technologies and you're using what you can use to tell your story, but it's a great story, we'll consider it. We're not going to disallow it because you don't have the latest camera.
Move so you can see me. I work for a nonprofit organization called Human Rights First, and we have a couple of really talented filmmakers on staff. We're always creating branded content, but also looking more and more to create short documentaries because we have access to great activists and to really powerful stories. So just wondering if you guys have any recommendations for organizations like us who want to get a wider viewership for our short documentaries and are interested in partnership opportunities with publishers. If you guys know of anything or have any recommendations for us or other groups like us.
I can speak to that a little bit. We definitely see a lot of cool documentary work coming out of different kinds of nonprofits and advocacy groups. In general, if there's just a really strong marketing message to a video, we find it's not that good a fit for our audience. We're really looking for documentary stories that are interesting to the average viewer, and if they speak to an issue, that's totally cool. We'll definitely highlight if it was made in a marketing capacity by an NGO or some kind of group. But I would try to focus your storytelling efforts on really original, compelling stories that don't merely come off as advertising material.
We also get a lot of pitches from organizations that are trying to highlight or promote their work. And one really good example of an op-doc that is promoting a specific program is called Melody. And it's about the Chilean youth orchestras. And the short was produced with the Gates Foundation. So they have a point of view, they have an agenda. They're talking about the specific program that they're funding. But the short is just a really well-made, beautiful short film. And you just feel like you're meeting these great characters and reflecting on the power of music. And it's very artistically done. The director mostly does fiction, so it's also really interesting to see a fiction director doing documentary. And it just happens to be that it's highlighting the work of a foundation. So I would say to the foundations out there, remember that we're interested in stories, and if you're able to also have a point of view in there that promotes your organization, that's fine, but for us, it's story first.
Hi. So internet culture and online video tends to be associated with virality and flash-in-the-pan popularity. Now, in establishing online documentary platforms, how do you try to combat that and create an audience that will stay and kind of be loyal and view more than just one video?
That's a really great question. I think about video strategy every day, and that's definitely a tough balance. That's a tough line to walk between thinking what's going to be a hit on Facebook this week versus how do we build an audience over time. And I think having hosted content has definitely worked for us in terms of building audience loyalty over time, and I think you see this playing out on YouTube as well. I think it's much harder to build an audience over time with a documentary series, even if it has a cohesive style and tone. But there are definitely exceptions to that rule. I think OpDocs is created by a really diverse group of filmmakers, but it has a really loyal following. There are people who are obsessed with OpDocs, like my team. We check it out every day. So finding that sort of cohesive thread through all your content so people know they can come back every day and find something great. Vice also.
Yeah, I think of the volume that we do, but it's also quality volume. So even for Munchies, pretty much every day, Monday through Friday, we had a video for an entire year. Now we've taken a break on Fridays, but you build your audience that they know at 9 a.m. there's going to be a new video, and we push our audience to go from a feature doc to a video on weed to a politics of food video we have to a hosted show by Action Bronson called Fuck That's Delicious, and the audience goes with us because they're not one-dimensional, so you can be entertained, want to cook, and also be interested in politics. But I think it's the consistency that every day we've got a video at 9 a.m. for you to tune in, so I think that creates a loyal following.
Hey, hi. This is for Vimeo. I watch a lot of the staff picks, and I'm on Vimeo all the time. They definitely skew more white male, and I was wondering if you guys have any female curators. I follow Megan, who has her Ladies with Lenses, which is amazing, and I love that. I would love to see more women featured on staff picks and people of color. And I was just wondering if that's a part of the staff picks mission, and if you guys have diversity in the curation department.
Sure. So my boss, who's actually boss of all curation on Vimeo, she's a lady, her name's Jordan, and she's based out of London. And maybe if you hadn't seen it in the last 4 or 5 months, that's because she's been away on maternity leave. So no, I won't throw her under the bus. Like I hinted at earlier, it's not part of our mission. We make our mission to find the best videos, and there's certain biases that perhaps we're not being self-reflective enough to understand. That is something that we can and should inspect. You know, we're in the middle of a process now that my boss Jordan is back, where we're, for the first time in a very long time, doing sort of a self-critical overhaul of our entire processes. And I think this is a topic that's come up in the last couple of weeks, because I feel this conversation has been growing in the culture as well, and it's causing us to ask those kind of questions of ourselves. So yeah, it's not part of our mission. We're sort of investigating whether it needs to be something that's part of our mission, but I think we feel like we don't want to be self-conscious about it either. We have a responsibility to all the creators on the site and to our audiences to keep as sort of our guiding principle, being true to our tastes and servicing what we think is the best work. And to the extent that we can diversify the voices on our team that are surfacing these picks, I think that is something that is definitely a priority as well. But we need to get Vimeo to allow me to hire somebody new first.
Hi. Just wondering about the documentary web series. I haven't really heard anyone speak about that, whether you accept them, you think they have a real life, if you commission them, if you think that's really a way to tell a documentary story. And what are, because it's a lot of talk out here about it's a way that economically you can make something, but are we making things for no place to put them, you know? So.
Oops, sorry. We have not done that yet, but I think it's something that's really interesting. And I would say I don't think that we have any reason why that would not be something we'd be interested in. However, we have not published a web series online yet, but something that I think if you have the material and it's something that you want to submit, I would encourage you to do that for sure.
We have an assignment for web series out of Brooklyn, so very local. Check it out. So people are interested.
We do a lot of web series. I think because now Vice in the digital game has been around for a while, which sounds funny, but we used to just do one-off stories all the time, and then actually a couple of years ago we had someone from TV come in for just a short period of time. She worked with us, and she was like, franchise, you need to franchise, you have to think of a host, everything needs to have a series, and not everything does, but within Munchies, like when we were launching, we have 18 series. There are one-off documentaries, but we find that it's better to create an audience, have a monthly rollout. We just are working with an outside filmmaker for a food and tech series. And I think you can then monetize it, you can sell it, you can get press around it. We live and die by the series, so we finding hosts, talent to promote it. So we do our one-offs, but we're very series-driven as well.
We are too. We produce original series. We've commissioned sort of mini-series, like 3 or 6 part web series, both animated and documentary. And we feature curated series, existing series.
How long are the episodes that you like?
What was Jason's answer? 1 second short of boring. It truly ranges. Most of our stuff is under 10 minutes.
And then ours is like, we like 22 minutes so that we can then think about it for TV after the fact, or a little bit longer so that you could recut it for TV. So it does range, but we like longer the better for us.
But we do focus on evergreen and standalone content because we're so small, we can't make that much stuff. So instead of like a narrative documentary spooling out over many different episodes, we'll do short one-off stories that you can watch in any order whenever you come to them on Facebook or Twitter or wherever.
So OpDocs, we haven't really done any series, but with the success of Serial and the Jinx, I mean, I think this is a moment when the documentary series is having its heyday. But I think it's really hard to do. We actually are doing an OpDoc series right now. We had the first episode. It was called A Conversation with My Black Son. And it was parents talking about what it's like to raise an African-American boy, and specifically how they talk to them about policing. And then time for Mother's Day, we're going to have the sons speaking about what it's like to be a young African-American boy and grow up in this world. And then we're going to be rolling out more episodes coming up. And it sort of just came together. It wasn't, kind of just happened. It wasn't like a huge amount of development, which is kind of shocking, the way things usually work at OpDocs. But we would absolutely be open to series ideas. I think that they're so challenging, both from a funding standpoint, but also a storytelling standpoint. The bar is just so much higher for a series than it is for a one-off. So I would say to people pitching series, really make sure that this is an idea that you feel is going to work as a series and that you can explain why it needs to be a series. And I mean, think about all the work that went into making Serial and the Jinx. Like, it's not, I think we get pitches for series where it's like, here's a bunch of sides of a topic, whereas a series, I feel like that we would be interested in be more like a narrative that would unspool over parts. Does that make sense?
I think at Vimeo, we've seen the success, at least on the free side, of documentary series that are grouped by theme. And so some of the really powerful examples in the last handful of years is a pair of guys out in California, and they did a series called California as a Place. And it's
good, check it out.
Basically unconnected documentary profiles of Californians. But they were able to get a little bit of the same advantage that you get from a series. What's the advantage of being a series? Well, like all these ladies have talked about that to succeed on the internet in some form or fashion with their platforms, you have to put out great work. It needs to be free and it needs to be frequent. The frequency is the thing that creators can now create for themselves. most of the time, while at least keeping quality high. And so what a series allows you to do is to get a little bit of that branding, a little bit of that franchising that you're able to introduce for yourself. And if you can insert that in a way that's not necessarily sequential storytelling, but still preserve that, then I think that is interesting. So California is a Place, This Must Be the Place was another documentary series. There's a gentleman named Joris who was just at Sundance this year with a series that he's been doing, I Am Los Angeles.
He did an op-doc.
This Must Be the Place was featured on our channel, and then I commissioned them to do 3 docs.
And one of the best series, I would say, is definitely Retro Report. Woo!
Okay, so we are going to all go to Phoebe's. I think the back room is reserved for us, Dwana, yes? So you should all be able to fit in there if you want to join us. I hope the panelists will walk over and have a drink on NIWIFT and socialize a bit with our members and non-members. Thank you so much for being here.